We all need sugar in our bloods for our bodies to function. Think of like our bodies like a car. That sugar in our blood is like the gas in the tank. Where it becomes problematic though is when that sugar is not cleared from the blood appropriately. Our body produces something we call insulin. And insulin is kind of like a key. It goes to the cells, it unlocks it, and the cells are able to pull that sugar in. Hello and welcome to Beyond the Table with Ashley. This is your nutrition series brought to you by Healthy Columbus and Fresh Food, Fresh Perspective. And today I'm here to talk all things diabetes. So first I want to talk a little bit about just what diabetes is and what's going on in our bodies and our blood and our organs and all of those types of things when we're talking about diabetes or pre-diabetes. Basically, we all need sugar in our bloods for our bodies to function. It has to, it's our fuel. You know, if you think of like our bodies like a car, like that sugar in our blood is like the gas in the tank. Where it becomes problematic though is when that sugar is not cleared from the blood appropriately. And I'll talk more about some of the things that happens and why we even worry about that being an issue. The way it works is we eat a food that's a carbohydrate. And carbohydrate foods in a nutshell are anything that after we eat it, it turns to sugar in our blood. So it could be a spoonful of sugar, it could be, a piece of fruit, it could be a piece of bread. Basically though, anything that we consider a carbohydrate, after we eat it, it turns to, we digest it, it gets released into our system, and now there's sugar in our bloodstream. And that's the fuel. Now how we use it is our body produces something we call insulin. Our pancreas produces it, the insulin goes into our bloodstream, it's when we sense that sugar in our blood. And insulin is kind of like a key. It goes to the cells, it unlocks it, and the cells are able to pull that sugar in. So that's what's happening to all of us on a daily basis, and when a body's functioning normally, that's kind of the process. So what happens with diabetes is our body is either not producing the insulin or we're not responding to the insulin. And as a result, we have too much sugar buildup in our blood. And why is this a concern? Well, it does damage. It does damage to our blood vessels. It does damage to our heart, put you at higher risk for heart attacks, strokes. And then it also does damage to where there's those little blood capillaries. So the kidneys, one of the side effects of diabetes could be kidney failure. The eyes, we can lose eyesight. Even our limbs. So the further out we go, the smaller the little blood vessels are. When they get damaged from too much sugar in there, that does damage to the surrounding tissues, which is why some people then have to have amputations, maybe a toe or a foot or even a leg. So we don't want that buildup of sugar in our bodies. So there's different types of diabetes, and I'm sure you all have heard of these. We have pre-diabetes, which technically isn't diabetes. I actually like to think of it as this is your chance to prevent diabetes, and I'll explain that. And then there's something called gestational diabetes, which affects women when they're pregnant. And then we have two types. We have type 1 diabetes and we have type 2 diabetes. So pre-diabetes is actually not technically diabetes. It's the state that we're in that might lead to diabetes, oftentimes does lead to diabetes. I like though pre-diabetes, if you think prevent, because this is reversible. So this can be a really good time to have that wake up call, like, whoa, I gotta get it together and start making some changes before I progress to actually developing, that type 2 diabetes. What's interesting is a lot of people have prediabetes. 1 in 3 adults, they estimate, has prediabetes, 1 in 5 adolescents, and most people don't know. So 84% of the people have no idea. And usually the only way that we kind of do know is through routine lab work. So maybe testing your fasting blood sugar, just to know like under 100 would be considered normal. In fasting blood sugar is you take your blood sugar first thing when you wake up or before you've eaten anything for the day. So usually your doctor will say don't eat, come in for labs, those types of things. If it's between 100 and 120, that indicates that pre-diabetes range. It's like your body's not quite doing what it should. If it's over 120, that's indicative of a type 2 diabetes diagnosis. One of the cool things about pre-diabetes is, again, some simple lifestyle changes like losing weight. Losing just 5% of your body weight can actually significantly reduce your risk of it turning into type 2 diabetes or leading to heart attack, stroke, or other complications. Moving your body, so shooting for like 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise, that's like 30 minutes of walking a day. And then switching up your diet can allow you to go from that pre-diabetes back to that normal range without getting to what we would call type 2 diabetes. Gestational diabetes is a type of diabetes that women get when they're pregnant. It can put you at risk for developing type 2 diabetes down the road. And this is something that you would work closely with your doctor. They actually monitor most pregnant women. They do a lot of screening for it. So if you are pregnant, there's a good chance you have to drink that gross liquid. They check, your insulin response. That's something that they control really well, oftentimes through insulin, through someone's pregnancy. I'm not going to delve too much into that, but just know that if you did suffer from gestational diabetes, it does increase your risk for developing type 2 diabetes down the road. There's something called HbA1c. This is kind of like an average of your blood sugar over a 3-month period. The reference range changes a little bit, kind of who you're talking to and at any point in time, but generally like 5.6, 5.7, up to 6 or even 6.5 can be that pre-diabetes range, depending on some other factors. Once we get over that 6.5 of your HbA1c, then we're looking again towards that like type 2 diagnoses. So say you've gotten a pre-diabetes diagnosis, say you're curious if you have it, unlike diabetes or type 2 diabetes or even 1 where we start to develop maybe some warning signs, oftentimes we don't have them, so it's either doing routine work or maybe going in to talk to your doctor if you have some risk factors. So if you're overweight, if you're not getting adequate movement, if you're over the age of 45, unfortunately, is a risk factor now. If you have family members with diabetes, this is something you might want to pay attention to. But what we've seen is doing things like switching up our diet, getting active, so 150 minutes a week of just even walking, so like 30 minutes, 5 days a week of walking is going to help, and even just moderate weight loss. So only 5% of your body weight, if you can lose that, is going to significantly decrease your risk to develop that type 2 diabetes and could kick you from that pre-diabetes back to that normal range. The other type, so type 1 diabetes, this is one where our pancreas does not produce insulin. This can be a result of an immune response to something. Some people are just born with this, and usually it's going to affect people in childhood, if not, adolescence, but usually you will know, and the only thing that you can do for this is to take insulin, like in the form of a shot or an insulin pump. Lifestyle is still very important. You still want to maintain that blood sugar control. You still want to be eating the right foods and moving your body and managing stress and all of those types of things. But this is a small subset of the population. So only about 5 to 10% of people with diabetes have that type 1 diabetes. Type 2 is the more common one. It used to be called adult onset diabetes because you don't develop it till later in life. However, unfortunately, people are getting it earlier and earlier these days. But so this type 2 diabetes, it's not that our pancreas is not producing insulin. However, our body's not responding to that insulin. So, each time we have the sugar in our blood, our body produces that insulin, we don't respond as well. So, our pancreas needs to produce a little more insulin to get, the cells to open up and to pull that sugar in. But when that keeps happening over and over and over, pretty soon our pancreas starts to give out and we start to not produce enough insulin. And so with type 2 diabetes, taking insulin, so some people are on insulin, is a treatment. There are some other medications that are not insulin that just help our body maintain that balance a little better. There's a lot that you can do with diet. In fact, I've worked with many people who've been on insulin, and while they weren't able to cure their diabetes, they were able to get off that insulin through making better choices. When we want to know, what might be a warning sign that maybe I've developed diabetes? Like I said, with that pre-diabetes, we don't have too many warning signs, which is why I really encourage everyone to stay on top of those biometric screenings that, most places offer annually. Check in with your doctor, and just starting with like a fasting blood glucose can give you a good idea, and then they may want to move on to some more advanced HbA1c testing. There's some things, if you've developed that type 2 diabetes, that can be like, ooh, this is a warning sign. I might want to go see my doctor because of this. If you're feeling really tired, if you're feeling excessive thirst or hunger, the beginning of type 2 diabetes, we see unintended weight loss. Or if your skin, you're developing rough patches, or you're feeling like pins and needles kind of in your hands or feet, all of these could be an indication that, we might want to do a little more work and see what's going on there. So what can we do? Whether we have pre-diabetes, we have type 2 diabetes, we want to prevent getting any of those, there's a couple little things that we can do with our lifestyle that go a long way. As I mentioned before, occasionally insulin is a needed treatment when we have type 2 diabetes because our bodies, we just can't get there to produce it, but we can maybe get back to that point where we can if we're following some of these lifestyle choices. Pre-diabetes is absolutely reversible with these lifestyle choices. And even if you have type 1 diabetes or something like that, these are all still important to adhere to. So obviously I'm going to talk nutrition first. I am the dietitian, but also this is where it's coming from. It's that sugar that we are consuming through foods in excess that's causing our body to get out of whack. And so, first of all, when we choose our carbohydrates, And again, you know, carbohydrates are anything that turns to blood after we eat it. So I'm talking sugar, soda, sweets, treats, cookies, candies, also fruit, whole grain, you know, pastas, breads, crackers, you know, all of those types of things are carbohydrates. But we have different types. We have simple carbohydrates, and what I like to think of these is they're very simple for our body to break down. So we eat them and boom, they become sugar really quickly. This would be like sugar, or like sugary beverages, or like, you know, cookies, cakes, candy, all the stuff, you know, we consume at holidays and this and that. And it's okay for a treat, but regular consumption of those is gonna start to throw your body out of whack and not being able to cover that blood sugar with your insulin. Sugar can also show up in places where you would least expect it. Soup broth was one of the ones that really shocked me. And even something like a tomato soup actually has a lot of sugar. Ooh, look at that. So this tomato soup right here, per serving, and this is 4 servings, there's 10 grams of sugar per cup. If you had this whole thing, that's 40 grams of sugar, including 4 grams of just added sugars, just to, I don't even know what for. So you want to limit those as much as possible, and then you want to choose those complex carbohydrates. So this would be any whole grain product, whole grain bread, whole grain pasta, and this would be whole fruits. You know, if you think of like this orange versus a glass of orange juice. So first of all, how many oranges did it take to make that glass of orange juice? And it's going to be several, so you have all that sugar in there. But then when you eat an orange, you know, we have all this fiber and stuff in here that slows, our body has to do work. It's complex, it has to break it down. Same thing, think of a piece of whole grain bread. There's the bran on there, you know, our bodies has got to do work to break it down. So rather than like a simple carbohydrate, we eat it and our blood sugar goes up really high and really quick, and then it usually comes down because we crash at the beginning, and then we crave more sugar and we go like this through the day. You want to choose those complex carbohydrates so it takes a little longer to break down. So our blood sugar doesn't go up as high and it doesn't go up as quick. And so it's going to be more like this and then like this. You still want to keep in mind the portions. You know, there's a big difference between eating 1 piece of whole grain bread and like half a loaf. You know, that's going to certainly impact your blood sugar. So you want to stick to reasonable portions. Then my other favorite kind of hack with this is we want to add a protein. So what that protein does is it slows even more the digestion and then the absorption of the sugar in the foods that we've eaten into our bodies. So say instead of a glass of orange juice, we have this orange, and then we add a protein to it. And I'll talk a little more about some proteins. All of a sudden, instead of it being like the orange juice where it's spike and then crash and then spike and crash, you eat the orange and it's kind of like this and this. Say you had a handful of nuts with that orange. That's a really good source of protein. It's got healthy fats that are also gonna kind of help slow that. So now we get this nice gradual release of the sugar into our blood, and that's what we need. That's our fuel, remember? So we've got nice sustained energy, and then we're not crashing and craving, so we kind of goes like this. So really, everyone should be eating this way. You know, I've talked with people with diabetes or people with pre-diabetes, and it's like, well, but my wife doesn't have it, or this or that, and it's like, we should actually all be eating this way, which is having something to eat every couple hours, not trying to go longer than 4 hours without having something, and having always a nice mix of some complex carbohydrate and a nice protein. Just a couple snacks here, and you know, when we think protein, a lot of times it's like, we think like steak, meat, you know, eggs, chicken, all those types of things, which absolutely are a good protein source. One thing to keep in mind is a little goes a long way with those. So like the size of like the palm of my hand or a deck of cards of a piece of meat or chicken, that's like 25 grams of protein. So a little goes a long way, but there's also other great sources of protein that we can get in. Greek yogurt, that is a great one. It's actually strained a few more times, and so the protein content is really high. And there are naturally occurring carbohydrates in that milk, but it creates that nice balance. Nuts and seeds are some of my other favorite plant-based proteins. And hummus, which I have on here, which is made from garbanzo beans, another great source of protein. You know, a little stick of cheese could be a good protein source. So each time we eat, we want to pick again like a nice complex carbohydrate, a nice piece of protein. I feel like with meals, people usually do better, but you might want to take a look at your plate and be like, what is going on here, and do these kind of balance. Snacks are where I feel that people really kind of fall off the deep end. You know, we go to the vending machine or all these, you know, snacks that we think of are pretty carb heavy and usually just those simple refined carbohydrates that are going to impact our blood sugar. So I just have a couple little snacks here. So like peanut butter and banana, or excuse me, peanut butter and apple. Peanut butter and banana works too. Great little snack here. In fact, when I'm like craving a candy bar, This is my go-to because I get that satisfaction from the peanut butter, I get the little sweet from the apple. I have this Greek yogurt and blueberries. Again, you get a little sweet from the fruit, but it's getting balanced out nicely. Hummus is my favorite, and you could put it on, you know, I have this zucchini, but you could also put it on like a whole grain cracker. I'm having just like this is my favorite time of year. We have these little oranges, you know, having like a little orange or two with something on the side, whether it's a handful of almonds, whether it's a string cheese, you know, that could be a great little snack. These bars, so there's lots of grab and go bars available on the market. These RX bars are pretty good when we're looking for what's a nice balanced snack. So if you can look here, you always want to look at the ingredient list. Now this is 23 grams of carbohydrates. 5 of those are fiber. So fiber doesn't count towards the carbs, so we can go ahead and subtract that out. Now we're looking at, okay, 18 grams of carbohydrates, 13 grams of sugar, no added sugar, but we have 12 grams of protein. And if we can kind of stick within that 10 gram range between protein and a carbohydrate, that's gonna be a good balance. Some of bars that you get out there though are completely carb heavy, so always be looking at the labels. Kind bars, the Kind nut bars are another good choice where it's a nice balance of that protein and that carbohydrates. I mean, the things that I like about these, you know, is these you can put in your purse, in your desk, in your car, you know, you can always have this, so you're not gonna go these long stretches, which is also what sets you up for overeating down the road, and you can have that nice balanced snack to kind of give you that energy, not go too much, not dip out too low. The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of blood sugar control is cinnamon. Cinnamon gets a lot of attention for helping lower blood sugar, which it absolutely does. However, you can't outrun a bad diet by having some cinnamon. So I'll put like cinnamon sticks in my water. I'll sprinkle it on like oatmeal. I put it in tea. Some people will even do cinnamon capsules, all which could be good, but keep in mind that's not gonna fix it all. You have to do that in combination with these healthier eating choices. And really the key to that blood sugar control is gonna be choosing complex carbohydrates, adding a healthy protein, eating every couple hours. 2 other things that I just wanted to touch on is moving our bodies. So when we move our bodies, we're using that sugar that's in our blood right then and there. And there was a really cool study actually that looked at people who already had diabetes. They started doing a 45-minute daily walking intervention. And as expected, you know, they were testing their HbA1c levels. We saw them go down in the walking group. But what I thought was really cool is they had a third group that instead of walking 45 minutes at a time, they walked 15 minutes after each meal. That group actually had the best blood sugar control. So if you just kind of can think about it, each time you eat, after a meal or a snack, if you can go take a little walk outside or move your body some, that's gonna burn off some of that sugar, and that's gonna go a long way as well towards blood sugar control. The last one I wanna just touch on is stress. So I've seen this countless times with people, and you know, they'll be eating a perfect diet and all of a sudden their blood sugar levels are out of control, and we talk about it, and they maybe had a fight with their husband that night, or we're going through a really stressful time in life. And it's a known thing that when we are stressed, we have less control of our blood sugar and our blood sugar levels spike. So maintaining stress management is another key thing to kind of keeping our bodies as healthy as possible. So other questions I get asked about eating with diabetes is, what do we do when we go to restaurants, right? Like, you know, what should I do? Is it all out the window? And absolutely not. Like kind of sticking with this same idea, and even like visually a balance of a carbohydrate and a protein. So say you went to Olive Garden and you know, you're getting a big pasta thing, they're gonna serve you way too much. And we wanna keep a serving of pasta is about a cup. So maybe you get a pasta with some chicken, you have them box the rest of it up. So you're gonna want, you know, like about this much pasta and about this much chicken. Then loading up your plate with the veggies, because to me this isn't enough to eat, you know, that's gonna help fill you up. Other little tips at restaurants is like, I always say no to the bread coming to the table, because we don't need to be starting our meal like carb loading on bread, whether you have diabetes or not, you know, it's just not a need. And you know, again, just kind of ask questions. You can have them pre-box things, but really just being aware of the portions that you're having. And then if it's an option, always going with the whole grain one. That may not always be an option. One thing I wanted to just show, because I do have some pasta lovers, I'm a pasta lover, and it, you know, for me, I'm like, a cup of pasta, like I want more. And you know, my workaround is I load it up with other veggies. So like I will do like pasta, and I'll throw in like tomatoes and eggplants and zucchinis and onions and this and that, so it's like a big bowl. But if people have ever tried zucchini pasta, and what you do is you can get a tool like this, and all you do is you kind of, it goes like this. I'm gonna make a mess here. But what you're doing is you're getting like little bits of the zucchini. And I like this because it has a good mouthfeel of noodles. Spaghetti squash, it's great, it's tasty, it's healthy for you. It doesn't feel the same as noodles, but I can make myself a bowl of this, and sometimes I'll like steam it or cook it a little bit. Oftentimes I just have it raw and put warm tomato sauce on there, and then I feel like I'm eating a big bowl of pasta. But this is a vegetable, so it's gonna come with a little bit of carbs, but it's mostly just good, healthy nutrients for you. So another thing to keep in mind if you've already had that diabetes diagnosis is checking your blood sugar is really important. Just like I was talking about with having a doctor and knowing what my levels are, there's power in that knowledge. And as you're checking it, you start to learn, like, if you're not on insulin, is it getting to a point where it's not controlled as well, where I need insulin? Are there certain foods, because we're all individual, some foods might trigger a higher, blood sugar response in people than others. So starting to get to know you and your body and just being as safe as you can be. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that was helpful. This is something that I could have gone on and on for hours about, but hopefully got you some good information in this shorter amount of time. Stay tuned, we're gonna have lots more good videos coming, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Healthy Columbus YouTube page.